And that's what Horus had to do. Only they called it Set back in those days. And yeah, you know, that's what we're trying. That's what philosophers are doing. That's what, you know, the Platonic tradition that I belong to are trying to do. Through wisdom, we try to defeat ignorance. And it's not a physical battle; it's an intellectual, moral struggle, in which we can use art or music or argument or logic. Another version of Horus is Harpocrates, called Horus the Younger, and he was often shown holding his finger to his lips. He was the god of the secret mysteries of Alexandria. Because sometimes the way to learn the secrets of how to defeat the Antichrist is through secret initiations. And we all go into that deep innermost place of secret silence within ourselves. That's where you get your inspiration to defeat evil and ignorance, just as Christ did in his day. So anyway, okay, and I don't see these as opposites. You know, Yahweh needs all the help he can get to re-establish the throne of righteousness. The Bible is full of beautiful images about what Yahweh is trying to do to bring a world of justice and peace into being. You know, the scribes that wrote it were not always very intelligent. Sometimes they over-exaggerate Yahweh's role in smiting and killing and defeating the enemy. You know, there's a lot of that crept into the text, which I would have personally edited out, because it gives the wrong image of what Yahweh's trying to do. But that was because they were a small people hemmed in by powerful neighbours, and so they had to kind of like, you know, create a military idea of God. But it's time to move on from that. Yahweh is about downloading cosmic conscience and moral righteousness from source, from the fire. And that's why the card is symbolised by the fire. But I see that as totally compatible with what Horus has to do. Horus has to do the same. He has to defeat Set, defeat evil, defeat ignorance. So we need to work together. All the followers and priests of Horus have to work together with the followers of Yahweh. And that, by the way, includes all of Islam. They're all followers of Horus in their own ways. And the Thelemites. Yeah, that's the work. You can read more about it in the text, obviously. It's in volume 1. Okay, shall we do one more?
Great.
Okay, you go first. You choose. Hooray.
God. Simply God.
Oh, right, that's a cool one. Yes, so you've got God. This is a fun card. This is number 9 of the Major Arcana. And is associated with the traditional tarot card, the Hermit. And there's a sort of a private joke going on as to why God was chosen for the Hermit card, because in traditional tarot, the hermit is always the solitary one who's off alone, represents that part of us that wants to be alone and in meditation and solitude. Well, that's very much what God is like, because God doesn't do politics. God, contrary to what people say, God isn't there flying around, you know, with an airplane display saying, people, this is God speaking, start being nice to each other, or, you know, get rid of nuclear weapons, signed God. I mean, you might wonder why, right? But that's not God's style. God is the hermit who's off at the end of the road, up the mountain, in the Taoist cave, in the cave where the Zohar was written, in the forests where Merlin is hiding. The God is on retreat, let's say. That's why Christ was always going into the desert on retreat, and why Muhammad also was always going into his cave to do meditation and prayer. God is who you meet when you go into retreat on that ultimate path of solitary consciousness exploration. The word God is good. In old Anglo-Saxon English, good was the pronunciation for God. And it meant the divine goodness. It's what you meet when you reach. I mean, we have a hermit living here in the monastery down the road, 5 kilometres away, who's a really good man. He even looks like this tarot card. And he's a Cistercian monk. He's a beautiful soul, just studying ancient Latin texts on how to find God. And the word for goodness was God in Old Anglo-Saxon. So the two have swapped around the meaning and pronunciation. And ultimately, God is the divine goodness, which is what Plato said. And St. John says, there is no darkness in God. God is the divine light and the divine truth. So it's a beautiful card to get. And I give more information in the text about this, including, I quote from my book on religious mathematics as to the numbers of God. Is there one or many or what? Or are numbers themselves like a dance, like a cycle? And they all resolve back to the one. As Heraclitus said, the way up and the way down are the same. So often, Nicholas of Cusa, a great cardinal and philosopher, said God is where all the paradoxes get resolved, and all the opposites coincide, which was a concept taken up by Jung. So God is it's like all numbers simultaneously. You can get your head around that. It's what I wrote my book on religious maths for. And Heraclitus said the way up and the way down are the same. In other words, negative and positive cancel each other out, etc., etc. They're all held in the mind of God. Okay, that's the first card. That's your one, which is a great card to have got. The Hermit, or God. And I drew the 9 of Earth, which is Kubera. And the Earth element is, our physicality, our physical needs, food, comfort, all that stuff. And that's important too. And this Kubera is the Hindu deity of wealth. He's lounging around counting his money. So he represents the wealth of the earth. This came up in the discussions of Rahul Gandhi. I mean, the job for politicians is to find a way, a formula to get... the earth is full of wealth. We have all the natural resources we need. We have food, we have fields, fertile agriculture, we have water. It's just a question of sharing them out so everyone gets a piece of them and has according to their needs. We all have certain basic needs. If we don't take more than we need, if we don't take for the sake of greed, then the earth can cope. It's a question of modifying our lifestyles so that we fulfill our needs but not our greed, and Gandhi showed us the way to do that, and that's what the Congress Party stands for in India. And in the Kubera tradition, the god of wealth is in charge of that, and the text goes into the details of how he appears. Kubera is often in prayers at the end of ritual sacrifices. His title is the Best of Kings and the Lord of Kings. So an important deity. He also figures in the Mahabharata. And Gandharvas and Apsaras, who are like muses, entertain Kubera. Often Shiva and his wife Parvati also frequent Kubera's court. So he has a whole mythology which I explain in the text. And he has a wife, Bhadra. And his story is interesting. He's also honoured in Jainism and worshipped also in Buddhism and even in Sikh tradition. So Kubera is revered in all the Indian religions. I'm probably going to a conference in February in Mumbai, and we're going to be talking about peace and non-violence, and one of the sections of the conference will be about the economics of all this. Why is it that the great, economists of the world haven't realised that if we're going to get peace, we have to have an economics of peace, and we have to stop investing in weapons and warfare. it's costing millions to help the Ukrainians, which I don't begrudge, and they desperately need help. But if only they could have prevented that war peacefully. And I suggested way back in 2008 the European Union have a mediation service which would have prevented that war had it been in place. Our duty at the European Union should be to make sure wars don't happen anywhere in the European sphere of influence, Mediterranean and so on. And had my voice been listened to in 2008, there'd be no war going on in Ukraine. And all those millions and millions and millions of pounds would have been saved for humanitarian needs. What the people of Ukraine and Russia need is, guaranteed social support, employment, worthwhile jobs, support for, doing the good things in life that we all want to do, rather than just pouring them into an endless well of violence and fear. And Putin is like a demon in the tarot, a set figure, who's just weaponized fear. But Kubera's not happy with him and not happy with war. And in Jainism, he's an attendant yaksha of the 19th Tirthankara, the 19th of all the Ford crosses. Mahavira was the 24th Tirthankara. So, there's a theology here. Why are God and wealth connected? Why have we drawn the two of them? What have they got in common? Well, that's quite an interesting question, isn't it? Because one thing you can say, and many people criticize God for, is like, you don't seem to care about the poor, you're not helping enough. What? I mean, in Paris, yes, it's a beautiful city, there's lots of wealth, but I saw people sleeping in doorways. I saw homeless guys crashed out on mats in the foyers of, rich buildings in the second arrondissement, who obviously just have nothing, just a bag and a mat. That shouldn't be happening in one of the richest countries, in one of the richest cities of the world. So that's why I think God and Kubera need to have a chat. God needs to come out of his hiding, stop being such a hermit, and say, you know what, economics, yeah, it's quite important. Should we work out a system? Marx got it wrong. He forgot to mention war and peace. Like what? He left it out of Das Kapital entirely. He never talked about the fact that war is one of the stimulants to capital formation. Not a mention, not a peep, totally miss. So, Kubera and God need to get together and say, we need to rewrite Das Kapital and stick in war and peace into the section. We just had the anniversary of the Battle of Borodino, which Tolstoy wrote War and Peace about. We need to do the economics of war and peace. And that's why as a philosopher, I'm doing a commentary on Das Kapital to put war and peace back into the text. But, help. We need more economists to get to grips with this. And we can't, the other thing Marx made a mistake about was saying, well, we'll just chuck God out of the pack entirely. Don't want God at all, just do all purely materialistic economics. No, that doesn't work, because people love their gods. They love their Yahwehs, they love their Horuses, they love their God. And so you've got to work with people where they're at, in their millions. And that is a wealth, whether one is a Muslim or a Hindu or Jewish or Christian of any variety. That's your social or cultural wealth. And it's part of the capital of humanity, it's part of the wealth. Think of all the amazing churches here in Europe and France, and all the amazing mosques in the Middle East, and all the great synagogues in Israel and around the world. These are temple treasures of great beauty. That's part of our wealth. So why can't we use all those wonderful energies, those God energies, to help Kubera sort out poverty and get support to people that need it, that are like refugees or homeless or penniless. So I think that's why the two of them need to have a chat. I think there's a lot of work they need to do together. Okay, so that's quite a good pairing, those two different sets.
Great job.
Any questions or any comments you'd like to finish with?
No.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for joining. And Kubera's keen on fundraising, so if you want to support the work here in France, feel free to send me an email. And there are different ways one can support this work. It's kind of important. Thank you.